Hi Five, I am back with chapter 7 today of The Boy Who Sailed the Ocean in an Armchair. So let's make a start. After Billy goes to sleep, I get out some pieces of paper and attempt to make at least 10 more paper cranes. I don't mind saying that it feels like Pearl has dropped off the face of the earth. Billy's right, it is a mystery. And why was her portrait in the garden at our old house? Why was there a hole punched through it? Who would do something so horrible? That's another mystery I can't figure out. I make one crane after the other, pleased that I'm getting good at it. Buoyed up by my newfound folding skills, I think I'll attempt another goodbye to Mum, seeing as I can't really text Pearl again so soon after sending the last one. So I pad over to the window and pull back the curtains. The moon's like a giant wheel of cheese in the sky, and the stars glitter and blink at me, tucked into their navy blanket. Mum, I whisper, trying not to disturb Billy. I turn back and look at him, and he snuffles softly like a piglet. Number 6 on the goodbye list is to say goodbye to you by naming a star. I turn back to the window. I hope this is the right way to do it. None of the other ways felt big enough. I asked Dad for some seeds last night. That was number 8 on the list, and he asked if I meant bird seeds, and I said plant seeds, and he said actually it didn't matter because he had neither. My toes grip the carpet. Mum's so important that I worry no goodbye will ever be worthy. Inhaling, I ask, is naming a star enough? I stare out towards heaven, and the moonbeams wash my face in silver. One star's brighter than all the others, and I press my fingertip to the glass. It leaves a tiny planet of heat. I'm calling this star Mum, I whisper. Goodbye, Mum. My eyes prickle as I realise that the star is still bright and it's going to be there forever, and Mum isn't, and it feels all wrong. At 5:43 in the morning, Billy wakes me from a dream saying he's had another nightmare. I take him to Mum's chair again and say I'll tell him more of the story about how 2 brothers sailed the ocean in an armchair. I tell him how the other people in their vessels could not hear the mysterious voice the boys had heard. They were adults, and maybe they didn't believe in magic the way the 2 boys did. The boys believed that if they called for help, it would come, I say. And even though they could not see the person who spoke to them, they knew that that person was all around, because the voice seemed to be in the sea, the sky, and the earth. One of the boys even wondered if the voice was inside himself. Inside himself, Billy murmurs. What? But before he can finish the question, he yawns the biggest yawn. His eyes are drooping too, so I tell him to go back to bed because the story can wait. In morning lessons, I'm secretly drawing a picture called Goodbye Mum, number 4 on the goodbye list, where Mr. Beagle shouts that he's got an exciting project for the class and can we please keep our eyelids wide open. He turns to face the interactive whiteboard, but then adds, Beckett, I'm talking to you. Please stop drawing pictures under the desk and pay attention. What is it with teachers? Do they go to teachers' school to learn how to have eyes in the back of their head? I quickly scrunch up the drawing and hide it in my rucksack. It was no masterpiece anyway. I wanted to draw me and Mum together. I had this big speech bubble saying goodbye, Mum, and goodbye, and Mum was looking at me. Only I couldn't really remember what Mum looked like, so I had to guess, and I think I guessed wrong because Mum sort of looked like Queen Kong. So there was no way this was the correct goodbye either. Right, we're going to be working on this, continues Mr. Beagle. He brings up some pictures on the interactive whiteboard of a group of smiling children drawing pictures in their classroom. Then there's another shot of them choosing plants and digging in muddy patches. And finally, there's one of them standing triumphantly in front of a small garden patch. Apparently, we're going to be doing exactly the same thing. This will be a chance to take something unloved and turn it into something very special that will flourish and grow under our care. Mr. Beagle says this is a project that will work on many levels, and then he forgets to tell us what these levels are, other than planting stuff in a rough patch of ground at the back of the playground near the old white wall. But according to Mr. Beagle, when the garden is complete, we're going to invite our parents along to view our labours and marvel open-mouthed at the beauty we've created. At least that's the plan. This is a living project and something you can sink your teeth into. The only thing I'd like to sink my teeth into is a burger, whispers Dante Moffat. I lean over and say I know a good burger van called Burger, she wrote. Dad bought our dinner from it last week. What's more, we're going to the Garden of Eden Garden Centre on Friday for our Year 6 trip, says Mr. Beagle. There we'll be looking at, writing about and sketching the plants that we'd like to include in our garden. Now, I don't want you all to get overexcited, but part of this project is a competition. You will each come up with a design for the final garden, and I will pick the best one for us to use when we start planting on the rough patch of ground. Mr. Beagle stops, looks around at the bored faces and says, There will be a prize. The class nearly takes the roof off. It's a winner's certificate. The roof roof is firmly back on. Mr. Beagle says it's called Project Observation of Plants. Dante Moffat says that's poop, and Mr. Beagle says it isn't, thank you very much, and if Dante says that word one more time, he'll be writing lines about poop, which doesn't sound all that great if you ask me. Mimi says, I'm not working on anything poop. I have high standards even if you lot don't. One day I'm going to say, that you worked on poop, shrieks Dante Moffat. Mr. Beagle utters the words lines, and Dante Moffat pretends he's quieter than a graveyard. Mimi narrows her eyes. One day I'm going to say I was in a class of idiots, but I got through it. She turns around and looks in my direction. Confused, I turn around to see if she's looking at someone behind me, and then I realise I'm in the last row. Mr. Beagle says, simmer down, like he's talking to a load of overexcited kettles, not kids. Project Observation of Plants is exactly that. I want you all to observe the plants and how they grow. This will be so exciting. I think Mr. Beagle's idea of exciting and mine are pretty different. Anyway, I want you to start by writing down things or people that could inspire you in this project. Does your grandmother remind you of roses because she wears rose perfume? Stick that on the list. You could plant a rose garden. Or did your dad smell of manure? Dante Moffat laughs at his own joke. You could plant a garden of... And then Mr. Beagle's rushing towards Dante, blustering about how he needs to pipe down or he'll be in trouble. Hey, I mumble, leaning forward and tugging on Robert's blazer in front of me. You'd be good at planting a garden. He turns around and glares at me. When I try to say that he'd be good with soil and stuff, he asks me why and his eyes narrow. Right now, saying I hit him on the head with a Snell cannonball last night doesn't seem like the brightest idea in the world. Because you've got big hands, I mutter, wishing the ground would open and swallow me up. Unfortunately, the ground doesn't, and Robert thumps the desk and tells me I know nothing about plants and what they mean to him. I didn't say I did. A poop garden, laughs Billy as we walk towards Dad's van after school. Dad told us this morning he'd pick us up, but didn't say why. I don't think I want one of those poop gardens at school. Smelly. Although, Billy thinks about it for a second and grins. Would you get lots of bugs in it? I like bugs, even bugs in poop. I flip my school bag over my shoulder. I suppose, I say. We're going to plant a whole garden patch and then our parents can come and see what we've grown. Billy's eyes flick to the pavement. The smile drops from his face. But we haven't found Pearl, so that means our parents can't come and everyone will know we don't have a mummy if it's only Daddy that comes. I tell him we'll find Pearl before that, I promise. But if I'm going to keep that promise, we're going to have to ramp Snoop up a notch. In fact, we're both going to have to go all out to make contact with Pearl in time to come to the unveiling of Poop. Billy isn't listening, though, because he's ducked down and is rummaging through a patch of mud. When I tell him he hasn't got time for that because Dad's here, Billy bobs back up with a snail in his hand, shouting that it's Brian. It's not Brian, and we don't need any more snails bringing home, I mumble, thinking how I've only just managed to get the slime off my duvet. It is Brian, says Billy, popping him in his blazer pocket. I'd recognise that face anywhere. Dad's waiting for us, the engine idling. Here, chocolate bars, said Dad, throwing them at us as we climb in and do up our seatbelts. We're going on a little shopping trip. For what? I get my chops around the chocolate, spraying shrapnel all over the seat. Decorating our lab pad, my son, decorating our lab pad. Dad puts his foot down. We're going to make the flat shinier than a goldfish in a golden wrapper. Then he looks down at my wrist and says, oh, what's that on your wrist? I haven't noticed it before. Sometimes I think Dad wouldn't even notice if a zombie introduced himself and said, pleased to eat you. Oh, yeah, I give the bracelet a twang, hoping it might break and fall off. A girl in my class gave it to me on the first day of school. I can't take it off. Dad asks me why, and I mumble something about it being stuck, and then I change the subject and say we're going on a school trip on Friday that Mr. Beagle told us all about today. Dad asks me where, an indoor skiing centre, an adventure playground, a mountain biking course? The local garden centre, I replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. We have to observe the plants, make notes on them, and then design our own garden. There's a class competition, and the winner will have their garden design used on an old patch of ground. Parents are going to be invited to come and view it. I pause and swallow down a chunk of chocolate before adding, do you think Pearl would come if I invited her? I let the words sort of dangle in the air like Dad's pine tree air freshener. Dad doesn't look at me. Instead, he keeps his eyes on the road and gives a little cough before saying she's probably very busy. My fellow Snoop spy elbows me to pursue my line of questioning, so that's what I do. I still think Pearl would love to see the poop garden, I reply carefully. Maybe I could ring her myself because I've got her phone number. The Codfather van suddenly feels like it is sucked dry of air and I want to gasp a little or clutch my throat dramatically. Surely what I said wasn't that bad. Only it feels like it was, like I just said the worst thing in the world. No, you're not ringing Pearl, snorts Dad. I've already told you this. She's too busy for poop or anything else, and we're too busy too, getting on with our lives. That's it. There's no way I can ask any more questions because a furry little creature feels like it's curled up in my windpipe, making it impossible to do anything but grunt. Beside me, Billy turns away and looks out of the windows of the van. This is bad because I can't see his eyes. If they're watering, I don't know. All I can do is look straight ahead and try not to cry myself. What's more, the stupid seatbelt's cutting off the circulation to my belly. Or maybe it's just that every time Pearl's mentioned and Dad gets frostier than a snowman in the Arctic, it makes my tummy ache. Eventually we reach Eden's shopping mall. Now boys, this is going to be a lovely afternoon because... Dad pauses before continuing. It's our lab pad we're shopping for. A place where we can eat takeaways, watch whatever TV we like and don't have to worry about eating healthy food or tripping over silly tubes of paint. And there isn't someone using my razor. But I liked eating healthy food, and the time I stood on Pearl's tube of brown paint and it squirted on the carpet was hilarious because I told Dad Billy had diarrhoea. I liked all those things and I liked having Pearl there, and so did Billy. With that, Dad zoomed straight into a department store, picking up bits for the flat and then setting them back if he's not sure. He picks up a cushion with a scorpion printed on it, and Billy says he doesn't want to park his bum on that. Annoyed, Dad sets it back and chooses a pair of plain beige cushions and a throw the colour of porridge, saying it's a perfect match for our living room. Yes, it looks like sick. Next, he picks a silver photo frame, a glass vase, towels, a canvas that says life doesn't get better than this, toilet brush, flannels, and a few strings of fairy lights. In the corner, tucked away, I spy cushions with blue swallows on them, and I ask Dad if we can get one of those. He nods. It reminds me of Mum's wallpaper in our old house at Honeydown Hills. It makes me feel happy. I'll put it in Mum's armchair. Then Dad is off to the section full of artificial flowers. There are splashy poppies and sweet peas that look like they're wearing frilly bonnets, a rainbow of roses and lilies. Lifting a handful of lilies, Dad says we must get some because they were Mum's favourite flower. It's the first I've heard of it, and I stare at the long white silky trumpets in Dad's hand and think how they'll never die. When Dad goes off to pay for his items, Billy pulls me by the elbow over to the light section. Underneath lights like blown bubbles and dangling swan feathers, he said, I could draw a missing person poster for Pearl. You said we needed to ramp up Snoop. Oh no. I shake my head. Portraits aren't Billy's strong point. Last time he drew me, I looked like a monster with two heads, both ugly. When Billy sees me shaking my head, he says we could phone the police instead. That's the only other thing left to do. And I say, and say what? Exasperated, I roll my eyes. Pearl's on a spaceship and we need her back? Great idea, I mutter as Dad returns overloaded with bags. As we trot out of the shopping mall, I see a man in the car park holding loads of helium balloons. I remember number 5 on the goodbye list, a balloon. Dad thinks I'm being daft when I insist I need the horse balloon more than I've ever needed anything before. He thinks I'm a bit old for balloons, so I tell him no one is too old for balloons, or why would grown men book those adventure hot air balloon trips? Dad says I have a point. So I am the proud owner of a horse balloon. Mum was never interested in horses, but then again, she was never interested in giraffes either, and that was the only other type of animal helium balloon they had. Billy opted for the happy birthday princess balloon, and when Dad said no one had a birthday, Billy said Dad could call it an early birthday present for him, as in 8 months early. Anyway, Billy said he was a princess, so that counted. As we walk towards the Codfather van, I let the ribbon loosen around my fingers. Gently it unravels as I whisper, goodbye, Mum, and then let the horse go. There, I've done it. I've said another goodbye. Maybe this is the one that will feel right. Only the horse doesn't gallop away on the wind far enough because Billy grabs the ribbon at the speed of light and says he'll keep the balloon if I don't want it. The whole way back to the flat, I'm squashed in the passenger seat, not only by Billy's pink birthday balloon, but by the back end of my own horse. And that's the end of chapter 7. I'll be back with chapter 8 tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Bye.